No logic. No logic.
Okay. Right. Good morning and welcome to the East Devon District Council Joint Overview and Scrutiny Committee Budget Meeting on Wednesday the 14th of January 2026. I'm your Chair, Councillor Mike Goodman. As this is a joint meeting of the two committees, I will be chairing the meeting until the adjournment for lunch, and in the afternoon it will be chaired by Councillor Anne Hall, who's Chairman of the Overview Committee. This meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. Now, there was a fire alarm, so there's not going to be another one. If there is another fire alarm, then please anticipate, they're not anticipated, but if the alarm does sound, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit, following the green running man signs above the doors, and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will then tell you when it is safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any member of the public who wish to view the agenda, you can go on to our website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. I'll hand over now to Sarah, who will do the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with the Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Blakey.
Present. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Brown. Councillor Chapman. No. Councillor Fernley.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Goodman.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Matt Hall.
Apologies sent.
Councillor Levine.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor McKinder.
Present.
Thank you. And Overview Committee, we have some members who are on both, so I will just acknowledge that when we're doing the roll call. Councillor Aurora Bailey.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Bailey.
Present, thank you.
Councillor
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roy Collins.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dumper.
Present, Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Fernley is here. Councillor Anne Hall is here. Councillor Heath.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Levine is here. Councillor McKinder is here. Councillor Riddell. No, and Councillor Wilson.
Here.
Thank you, Chair. Both committees are quorate.
Thank you. Vicky.
I'm also here on scrutiny, but I wasn't asked.
Beg your pardon, Councillor Johns. Thank you. I can see that you're here. Thank you very much.
Does anyone, now going on to agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting, which was held a year ago, pages 3 to 12. Does anyone have any comments on the meeting of these minutes? Those that can remember exactly what was said? Or can I accept those as a record? All those in favour? Thank you. So apologies, I got apologies from Ian Barlow, Bethany Collins, Ollie Davey, Joe Wibley and Marcus Hartnell, but I also got apologies from Jenny Brown. Are there any other apologies?
Bellingham. And Steve Gaddard, still unwell.
Okay.
Chair,
They're not
yes,
on the committees.
no, they're not. We also have apologies from Councillor Alistair Bruce and, as you said, Councillor Matt Hall.
Yeah, thank you. Item 3, declaration. Do any members of the committee have any declarations? Please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, state what exactly the interest is, and specifically type of interest you are declaring. Are there any councillors in the meeting who want to declare either outside first of all and inside? No. And, oh, right.
Do we have to declare an interest on place on 8A because we're Exmouth Town councillors or not, Chair?
No.
No? Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you. So agenda item 4, public speaking. There are no members of public down to speak. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are no confidential items. There are none. Item 7, decisions made, cabinet called in. There are none. So we're going on to agenda item 8, which is the draft directoral plans, which is the main item for this morning. And I'm asking Tracy if she would, who's our director, to present the covering report, after which I will ask members to comment. Tracy.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, we changed the approach last year so that we were presenting directorate plans to committee to enable us to look at the services that were being provided in a directorate approach. This year, what we'd like to do is to present to you the directorate plans for a 2-year period or until the local government reorganisation, whichever is soonest. The idea being that what we've tried to do is to ensure that we've covered all of the new areas of work that are being looked at and delivered across the local authority to ensure that we can deliver that within a reasonable period of time with the resources that we have. So what we want to do is to ensure that these plans are kept under review, they're kept live, and that we can monitor them alongside our resource provision and our budgets as we move forward. Each of the directors will provide you with a detailed analysis of each of the plans for you to be able to ask significant questions on. But I just wanted to say that as far as the leadership team are concerned, we feel that we've got a lot of information in these plans. As a local district authority, we are very ambitious around what we're looking to achieve over the next couple of years. And we've had a lot of support from members and from Cabinet around what we're prioritising and why we're prioritising that over the next couple of years. So if I can ask committee to note the plan and ask any relevant questions, please.
I've just got one question. When the various headings on performance targets is said, it does say they're going to be reported every 6 months or every year, every month, but not the how. So therefore, where will it be reported? And that is the case in a number of them, not all of them, but I'm just generalising that because it's important that we know. Some would be scrutiny, some would be overview, some would be audit, but I just wonder if we could just put that on some of the reports. Not a big point, but just something to go forward.
No, it's a fair comment, and we will make sure that that's updated. Thank you, Chair.
Right, do I hand over to
I think
Andy
Andy's
now?
going first.
He's going first.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. As Tracy has said, it's been an interesting time to put together directorate plans for the next 2 years, and it certainly feels we're not going quietly into the night in terms of local government reorganisation. I was just going to kind of just remind everyone of how the Place Directorate is comprised, and then move through probably the key issue, which is for us around the kind of balance between business as usual and transformation, and then look at some of the specific strategic objectives, if that makes sense. So just in terms of the composition of the directorates, so it brings together 4 key service areas, those being countryside, environment and ecology, street scene, place, assets and leisure, and strategic planning and development services. You can see it's a pretty diverse range of activities, straddling everything from our frontline service delivery through to strategic planning and setting some 20-year policy frameworks as well. We also report to, I think I totted up 7 different portfolio holders as well, which gives a kind of an understanding of the breadth of activity as well. Probably the crux of the directorate plan in front of you is around managing the next 2-year period in relation to business as usual activity, and some of the really key transformational activities we need to complete within that period as well. It's interesting from my mind to think about business as usual. I think members would be aware of some of the challenges, for example, around street scene that we've experienced over the course of the last 6-9 months in particular. And even within a district, if you assume online frontline service delivery, even the context for that within a rapidly growing district, you know, it's hard to think of BAU as genuinely everything being kind of steady state. So making sure we're on top of those issues absolutely is a key theme within the directorate plan. Equally, we're trying to strike a balance with ensuring that, I know transformation is an oft-used word in local government terms or local government world, but they're genuinely, for me, a number which are detailed in the directorate plan of key strategic items that are risky for the council. They are time-bound, but are absolutely critical to how we move forward, and if you like, the legacy that we leave as a council as well. Highlighted within there are aspects such as the introduction of the new LATCO, the East Devon Environmental Services, which absolutely has to be operational. And so there's continuity of service delivery from the beginning of July. There are other aspects around community asset transfer, which have taken on a new meaning, I think, in relation to local government reorganisation, and a real appetite from parish and town councils about how that approach works and community asset transfer looking forward. We know that we're very unusual in having 2 new towns, and one that will start potentially on site, the second new town in 2029, which, while slightly beyond the timescale of this plan, I think we absolutely know the learning from Cranbrook is you have to do all of that work up front. You have to set the tone and make sure the delivery model is right up front. There's a huge amount of learning there. We are, that's a nationally significant project. We know we're in the list of 12 shortlisted towns for the National New Towns programme, and there's a huge amount to do there. There's obviously a huge amount around our climate change and mitigation work as well, and we have a capital programme, including aspects like the beach management plans, but other projects as well, which is totalling nearly £100 million. So there's a huge amount of work there that needs to be successfully delivered, which I'm, absolutely conscious of. And you can see the challenges around resourcing. A lot of that activity is stretching both our capacity and our capability. So we've been, it's a very clear theme that came through from staff, particularly with the assistant directors, around how we do that going forward. It's not just about within the directorate, looking to Mel, for example, around, clearly has a kind of system level, if you like, an organisational impact around how we manage certain aspects of the work, because absolutely it draws on legal expertise and capacity as well, for example. More widely, our relationship with stakeholders, parish and town councils in particular, but more widely the county council and beyond, absolutely critical in terms of how we deliver successfully some of these key areas of work, including with the third sector, the voluntary sector as well, organisations like the Woodman Trust, for example. So I'm hoping that gives you a good sense upfront within the directorate plan of how that works. I wasn't going to run through in detail all the individual objectives in terms of how they relate back to the council plan, but I'm very happy to take any questions around that. And then lastly, from my perspective, just to say thank you particularly to portfolio holders for their ongoing support. As I mentioned, some kind of challenging areas of work in there that hopefully we're all progressing at pace and to programme. And also to the members of staff as well, for their professionalism, their dedication. I know there's a theme in there around have we got the right resources in place, have we got the right capacity, capabilities, and that's something we need to keep under careful review over the next 2 years in particular. But certainly there's a real enthusiasm, I think, to, given the good work or good outcomes this will deliver for residents in East Devon, to make sure those things are successfully delivered, Chair. So thank you very much. Very happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Before I ask you to ask Andrew, I just wonder if the portfolio holders, any of them would like to add anything to what Andrew says, and then we'll take questions. Because I thought I just want to give you the opportunity, anything you wanted. John.
Take the opportunity, Chair, and forgive me, my brain was still trying to get into gear as the Chief Executive was speaking, so I just wanted to take you back to the question you asked the Chief Exec about monitoring, and I've just gone back to my notes. of the session that Cabinet had with the ELT last week in preparation for all of this. And one of the things that we talked about was about the need to review all of this once we knew where we were going, with whom, around LGR. So that's summertime, we anticipate. And what we then agreed was that we would sit down and work out, in light of that, how we would then monitor, how the ELT would monitor, and how Cabinet would monitor the direction of travel of the plans. So apologies for jumping in at this point, but I thought if I didn't say it now, my brain wouldn't allow me to remember it in an hour's time.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, with your forbearance, Andy forgot to say one thing in his list of thanks, which is thanks to himself, which might have appeared slightly incongruous had he done it that way. But I'm sure Place Directorate colleagues who are with me on this side of the table, which seems to have become a bit of an us and them today, members and officers facing each other across the room. But no, Andy is a huge credit to himself and to the organisation. I count myself very, very lucky to be able to work with him. So thank you, Andy, for everything that you do and for the plan that's in front of us today.
Open up then to anybody who would like to ask some questions. Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I realise that obviously that with budget constraints, there need to be some things that get cut back on. And I noted amongst the list of items that you're cutting back on is on your page 48 of your report, which is 64 of the PDF agenda pack, that you're going to no longer work on the decarbonisation of swimming pool heating. Do you have any idea roughly what the scale of saving in terms of finances, and also, and it may be too early to tell, what the impact on the carbon output of the council will be as a result? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I can get you the precise figures. There was some work that was being tendered around, some consultancy support to scope out exactly what form those measures would take. And it's a question of whether we can successfully, I think that, amongst everything else, about how we can deliver that programme within the allotted time available to us. But I'll certainly come back with the kind of scale of the current emissions, which I don't have off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
Order. Then John.
Thank you, Chair. When you sit down and look at the report like this and you see the amount of things we do, I just find it amazing. There's so much going on and it's difficult. There was one slightly amusing thing, which is in an area that I work in, that on page 36 of the report, and the Cliffs Valley Regional Park appears to be funded by Finance, Revs and Bends and Legal. So I'm not quite sure what's gone on there. I think there's been a bit of a copy and paste accident. So just and under countryside environment and ecology, legal and environmental health, it's not quite right. I've seen what the officer gave for the report, and there's been a bit of an error there. So just alerting you to that.
I think Andy's made a note of that. John.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Andy, question for you, if you could answer it, I suppose. How is the recruitment of street scene operatives progressing? Do you know what the current figures of vacancies are? And will recruitment be impacted by the formation of unitary authorities in a year or two's time?
So we did some initial work back in the summer, sorry, Chair, in the summer, because there was concern about the level of vacancies we were carrying at the time, which was, it was difficult to get a completely precise figure. It was, concerned that it was kind of nearing 20%. I think subsequent to that, there was some rapid work done with Gemma and HR colleagues to think about how we could quickly get in place additional members of staff, some changes to some of our recruitment processes, how we use agency staff, for example, that did actually successfully reduce that, and I can get the precise figures to you, Councillor Heath, in terms of how that kind of impacted straight away. I think you're rightly, more strategically, the concern around, and it's probably common for all staff, the uncertainty currently around local government reorganisation. I know Tracy has been absolutely on the case in terms of making sure there are regular briefings for all staff, including to depots, for the depots as well, because there's a slightly different way that information needs to be presented, providing reassurance that it will be continuity from April 2028. And as far as I'm aware, that has not been for street scene a particular issue that's impacted on retention or recruitment. The issues have been more around kind of pay, the type of work, and making sure we're making our recruitment processes as simple as possible, if that makes sense.
Anybody else got any questions they want to ask, Andrew? No, don't think we can let him off that lightly if no one else has got in. I got several actually, Andrew. On page 4 of the report, it says you're working at 120% working. What does that mean? Shall I give you 2 or 3 and then it might be easier? You mentioned this, but you said about the work that's got to be done in the 100 million, on page 5, 100 million for all those things you said. Are we happy we got the finances for that, or is that going to be something that might well have to be taken up in the future? And the third point is on page 43, it talks about climate change, but it doesn't say when the new climate change action plan will be put in place. I know it was due last year. I think it's March this year, but it doesn't say it there, and I just don't know if you would know when that might come. That's those 3.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Taking those in turn. So, I think the 120% is probably not the best way of presenting it. It's more referring to the 20% figure I mentioned earlier, that we're carrying that level of vacancy previously, and that we've sought to manage that down, if that makes sense. Yeah. So perhaps not the best way of presenting that. In terms of the capital programme, I think there's a combination in there, or a mix. To take one example, the Cranbrook Leisure Centre, when that came last to Cabinet, it was very clear as part of the additional resolutions from the meeting that it needed a formal kind of business case to be considered that would agree the funding mix as part of that. That is not all fully formed or resolved at the moment. There are ongoing negotiations with Sport England, for example. There's likely to be a blend of different funding, some of which is more secure than others, including Section 106, but there's probably going to be some quite uncomfortable decisions to be made around borrowing for us as well within the mix. So that would be one aspect. We know equally with some of the beach management schemes, the rules around the funding there have evolved recently, and there are key schemes in there that we're hoping to complete the funding package on as well, which are more secure. And there are others where, around things like district heating, where we have got large amounts of funding secured, but it's trying to get the right scheme to be delivered as well. So probably of those, the one that I would highlight as being, the one that will really need to come back, and there are kind of gaps in the funding blend and mix at the moment, is around the Cranbrook Leisure Centre. But that's obviously a key area of ongoing work, and a lot of work going on to resolve the design and the cost as well, Chair. If you're happy with that answer, the third one is around the climate change and the action plan. Yeah, I was just going to look left, because I know Matt is doing a lot of work on this at the moment, should hopefully be able to update on the timescale.
So I'll be Gemma for today, I'm afraid. So as far as the climate change strategy goes, we're doing a lot of work in the background around that. We have a draft which has gone through senior leadership team. Councillor Jeffries has seen it as well. What we're looking to do is to actually run some workshops with members in the not too distant future. So we're just literally about to start that process. So we're going to be talking to Democratic Services to get that set up. So yeah, that's kind of hot off the press, that news. But yeah, that's the plan, because what we'd like to do is a bit of engagement with members. And that also includes the action plan as well. So we've been working very hard to make it a bit more quantifiable than it was previously, because it's quite a difficult one to pin down. Yes. So yeah, we'll be presenting that in these workshops going forward. So hopefully I'll have member support to take that forward.
Thank you. Now, because we have got a little bit of time, I do want to bring up one issue on page 54, Andrew, the pitch strategy. And I was at the meeting with you and others last night, and I think this is so exciting and so important. Many people would not know about it. I wonder if you could just, in a few sentences, explain the phenomenal work that we're doing on that for our residents. Because this is an opportunity, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. So it was a really good report last night from Mike, our leisure strategy manager. The playing pitch strategy, I think, was, was in need absolutely of being refreshed and revised. And that work is underway with support from Strategic Leisure. I think the report last night gave a really comprehensive update on the engagement that's taken place across parish and town councils, but with the sports bodies as well, and some of the activity that's underway or needs to happen in order to make sure that level of provision goes forward, working in, absolutely in partnership as well, to ensure that that stock of playing pitches, which are incredibly well used, is not just maintained but also enhanced going forward. And so that playing pitch strategy work, felt to me last night from the conversation and the debates at the forum, but also more generally, progressing really well. Clearly, it's not just about the strategy, it's about the delivery ultimately as well, but good confidence that that works, really, coming forward in a very thorough and robust way, Chair.
Yeah, we all thought it was an excellent report, and I'd urge members to have a look at the report. It was on the leisure meeting last night, but it really is very good work. I just got one last one, Andrew, and it's on page 63, where you say about stopping doing trees for 3 years. What do you actually mean by that? Because obviously, as a council, we know we were late getting our tree strategy in. I just wonder, what is the impact going to be? Page 63 of your report.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So it's a theme across all the directorate plans that obviously we've had to look carefully at prioritisation, given wider financial challenges. As you highlight, the trees, hedgerow and woodlands strategy was recently adopted, and it's a question of what we can do, a bit like the playing pitch strategy actually, what we can do ourselves, but what we actually need to do in partnership as well. And that's kind of wider leverage, if you like, wider collaboration. So we know the likes of the Woodland Trust are very active in the district. We need to make sure we are working in harmony and partnership with those organisations in order to maximise the actual impact. So hopefully, it's not to say this won't happen, it's how we deliver in totality, in collaboration, I think is the key point, Chair.
And that was really, Andrew, I want you to explain that, because the thought of us not doing this, after doing the strategy and spend a lot of quality time on it, I wouldn't want to see that happen. You've explained that. I just think it's important that residents realise that trees are important, and we won't just stop it, but it's about working together with different organisations. Okay, but thank you for my question. Thank you for answering. We got one from Brian. Brian.
Thank you, Mike. I can't be the only councillor here that's concerned about the rather large amount of debt that we're racking up in various departments, which is several £100 million. How is this going to be repaid, and by whom, please?
That's not replace, is it? That's this afternoon. Yeah. It's this afternoon. It's this afternoon when Simon's in the seat, and he'll explain all that to you. No, this afternoon. No problem at all. Okay. Well, can I thank, oh, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one quick question. Page 46, regarding planning, as second line. The percentage of major planning applications determined within 13 weeks or within an agreed extension time. Now, the target is 60%. If we are targeting on the basis of something that we determine ourselves in terms of the time required, it seems that the target at 60% to me seems a little bit low. But how does that relate to the current performance, and does it need another look?
Thank you, Chair. It's a really good question. So it's something, our performance around determination of planning applications is something we have to monitor very carefully. We do have a dashboard which I can provide to Councillor Blakey if that would be useful to just demonstrate its current performance. We have to monitor it so carefully because if we fall beneath kind of nationally set target, there is the potential for effectively special measures and some of that decision making being removed as well. So if it would be okay, Chair, I can provide the full contemporary position as to how we're currently performing to Councillor Blakey.
You're very helpful, thank you. Vicky.
Hi, thank you. So I did look through this previously, and I have just scanned through it again, and I may have missed it, but under planning, there's nothing for enforcement at all, where we sit within enforcement, whether or not, if enforce, you know, when an application, when somebody's done something they shouldn't have done, and it's gone to enforcement, there's nothing saying what's actually happened, where we sit with percentages, etc., whether or not anything's actually been done within the timescale it should be done by. Is that supposed to be on this report as well?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very conscious of members' concerns around performance around enforcement. There was, I think, a spotlight session that's looked at that. I know it's an area we discussed, you know, for example, with Mel recently around, you know, how we improve performance and processes. So it's an ongoing area of attention. The reason it's not on is because I think it's not subject to the same nationally set kind of performance metrics, if that makes sense. It doesn't mean to say we couldn't put something in if that was the appetite, but we'd need to be clear about, you know, just framing that in a way that is meaningful, because unlike determination of major planning applications, it's not part of a suite of nationally set indicators, if that makes sense, Chair.
But I think you're right, and Vicky, it is something that concerns our residents and town and parish councils, and it's what can we do and what should we do. Maybe it's got to go back to overview or scrutiny to look at, but we want the right outcomes, but I certainly do get issues from residents about it. But let's take that offline and look at what we can do as a council on that. Okay. Any other questions? Well, Andrew, can I just summarise, say thank you very much for what I consider an excellent report. It's more than a report, actually. It's a lot of actions that your team are going to be doing over the next year. And when just one of them would be a lot, but you've got two major ones in not just LGR, but you've got leisure and you've got waste. You know, I just think what you've done so far is fantastic. And I know Todd mentioned that earlier. And anything else both committees can do to help you over this next year, we would like, I'm sure, Anne and I would like to do, because it's it's very exciting, but there's a lot of work involved. But thank you very much, and also thank you for your team, your directors and officers as well. Okay, well with that, shall we move on ahead of time? This is good, to housing, I think it is. And I'm going to ask Catherine, oh, there she is, hand over to you to talk about housing.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, so, yeah, I won't reiterate Andy's comments around the kind of general pace of work, but it is very much a common theme, I think, across all of our areas, really, in terms of the amount of work ahead of us. But that said, you know, when we looked at it as teams and when we looked at it as a directorate, the teams are very certain that these pieces of work absolutely need to go ahead, and therefore they've remained within the plan. So we've looked at, obviously, the digital home digitalisation, sorry, put my teeth in, of Home Safeguard, and obviously the development of that service, to look at how we market that service and how we develop that service furthermore, for it to be an income generator for the organisation. We're really excited by that. It's a real opportunity for us, and we're working with our colleagues in comms to look at how we market that. That said, it's a very complicated and complex project. It's not an easy thing to roll out. And with so many outside factors that we need to can be thrown as curveballs at any one time, we need to be agile and we need to be ready for those. So the team are equipped, and they are absolutely working really hard towards that. So we're excited by that opportunity for us. Within the same team, so within the statutory services team, we're also leading to look at our homelessness pathway. There've been quite a lot of changes happening within the funding streams and the way in which the kind of county are looking at homelessness. And again, it's a real opportunity for us. We're seeing these as opportunities, absolutely, in ways that we can develop our services, looking at more specifically services for young people and care leavers, and also kind of making sure that our services are fair and equitable across all of our services, and we're giving people access to housing and suitable access to suitable housing. So again, a real opportunity for us, and yeah, we're looking forward to the piece of work that's coming forward and will be imminent, actually. We've had a very challenging couple of years within the regulatory housing sector. I know you know that, and so I won't labour the point too much. But that said, our C2 judgment hasn't meant that we've kind of sat back. Very much the team are working towards an action plan that has been put together to achieve the C1, and that is very much in people's sights. So there is a big piece of work in train around that, and we're working closely with the regulator in forming that action plan and having smart targets put against all of those things to be able to reach that C1 grading. We also will be seeing imminently, so in the next, not this month's HRB, but the next HRB, so in April, we'll be looking at the 30-year business plan and the asset management strategy for our housing stock, which again is a piece of work that we've been waiting for. I know a lot of you have been anticipating that piece of work, so it's great that we're in a position to be able to be presenting that to you soon. And then obviously, once we present that and agree that, that needs full implementation, which again is a huge project in itself. Our build and buy plan that has already kind of been through the kind of cabinet process is now up and running, and we're again excited to be looking at those opportunities and looking at feasibility work around some of those pieces of work. That said, again, these things are literally written as sentences in front of me as prompts. And in a sentence, it sounds great, doesn't it? But the level of work behind each of these sentences is massive. And the teams are working really hard to pull this together for us. So and again, it's another brilliant opportunity for us to be bringing on new homes in areas of need to meet the needs of people who are coming through our services. So it's just a fantastic opportunity to shape what regulatory housing looks like and statutory housing looks like within the district. That said, we are also in the process of needing to start conversations around what LGR could look like for housing. And we do need to start those conversations with the other stockholding authorities in Devon to just start to talk about opportunity, to think about the impacts of LGR while we await the outcome of that kind of agreement really from central government as to what that looks like for us. It seems prudent to be starting those conversations with the other authorities. Across into the environmental health side of things, we're implementing the corporate health and safety management system, which again, lovely little sentence, succinct, but actually it's not only the kind of pulling together of what that system needs to look like, it's the actual physical implementation of that. It's then working with all of the different services across the whole of the organisation to ensure that people understand it, how to work with it, and actually how to get the information that we want and need from it. So again, a huge undertaking for Jeremy and his team there. That we, will take a lot of resource and energy. We've continued with the approach of wanting to introduce trauma-informed approaches across the organisation. We're going to be starting to roll out training, working specifically within the housing element to begin with, and customer services teams, those kind of front-facing customer-focused teams, and then we will be rolling that out across the rest of the organisation to really understand psychologically informed approaches and how we work with people who've had lived experience of different events, so that we make sure that we are absolutely meeting need and understanding the person at the centre of all of the services that we deliver. The Climate Change Action Plan at the moment still sits with us. It will be moving across to a different director, to Mel's directorate, but at the moment that sits still firmly with Matt and myself. So as Matt's already said, so I won't labour the point too much, we're looking at that action plan and that strategic delivery across the district. And we're looking at being slightly more creative in the time that we've got left in how we utilise the funds that we have available, so that we are ensuring that we're getting the best bang for our buck, really, in terms of meeting local need and actually providing services to people out across the district. And then finally, but not least, looking at our community resilience programme and our emergency planning, coupled with our business continuity approaches. So again, a big major piece of work for us to develop some of those services furthermore, to introduce further kind of quality standards within those pieces of work, and ensure that we are providing a robust response around all of those areas. So that's it in a very succinct nutshell, but obviously, as I've said, quite a lot behind that. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
Dan, did you want to come in at this point at all?
Thanks, Chair. No, I've got nothing really further to add. I think the director's fully covered it. It's just a really exciting time. I think you can see from the list of things that we're trying to complete as a council. It is just, it's everything that I think all the councillors sitting in this room want to see achieved by the council. We're delivering new homes. We're trying to reduce and end homelessness within the district. We're trying to end poverty as much as possible. There's so much involved with it, and I'm just so thankful to the team for putting it together and making it happen.
Thank you. Right. So, committee members, Tim and John.
Seems to have died.
Can you
redo it?
Yeah, yes, it's gone to sleep. I was just going to go to the bottom of what Catherine has just said to us about the last but not least, the emergency planning area. And I wanted to ask specifically the relationship between, because we've been concentrating on relationships with town and parish councils, and I think being on the community resilience group we have in Exmouth, sometimes I feel that maybe the gap between district and town is evident in that field, and I wondered what you'd got to say about that, Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Dunbar. Dave Whelan, who's our emergency planning officer, has been making great strides in getting out into community. He's looking to build up a community resilience network at the moment. And I know he's done some real work with Sidmouth and some of the other town councils. Came very much out of the floods that we had back in 2023 in Newton Poppleford. And we saw the benefit of having that engagement at a local level. If Exmouth aren't feeling that they've had much engagement at the moment, we'd be very happy to do that, because like I say, we are trying to build up this community network. And that goes to any town or parish council. If we can support and build up that relationship to make sure that local communities are empowered to deal with those sort of situations, then we'd be delighted to do so. So please let me know if that's something we can pick up directly.
Yeah, to just add to that, I think my memory serves right. You did an excellent scrutiny session with us, which was well received by members. Really very, very good report. Okay, John?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Catherine, I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but I just want to know what the measurable different developments in reducing the number of empty properties and the timescales of when a property becomes vacant and is subsequently been made available for occupation. So I kind of be interested to know what the percentage reductions within the last 12 months have been, and what is the target for the next 12 months? Thanks.
I'm afraid I don't have that information in front of me right now. Had I had it beforehand, I could have potentially brought it along. However, those figures are all reported at HRB. The papers are available already up and running, so that information is already on the intranet and extranet. So feel free to have a look, John. If there's anything, though, that you want query on, or you've got any further queries once you've had a look, please do let me know. However, I can clarify, just for some reassurance across the room, that actually those figures have considerably reduced in this last year, and the team have made incredible strides in terms of the turnaround times for void and relet. And actually it's one of those areas that we've been kind of celebrating with the team in terms of recognising their achievements. We still have some way to go, of course we do, but at the same time the performance measures, and again I won't quote them because I can't quite remember the figures off the top of my head, but they are a considerable improvement on this time last year.
And also, it's one of your actions, item 4, develop a new empty property strategy to reduce the number of empty properties in the district. That is going to be really very important work to be done during the year.
Can I come back on that, Mike, just very quickly?
Yep.
Well, it's just to say that I recognise the improvements in housing. I've seen that from direct experience of projects in Beer and Branscombe, so I do want to recognise that. I think it's important to note that. Thanks.
Catherine.
It was just to say that in terms of the empty property strategy, that obviously sits within a different area compared to the housing voids. Again, yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor, that we are looking at that empty property strategy, and that is a huge piece of work for us, and also engaging with kind of private landlords in how we utilise bringing some of those properties back into stock, and hopefully with the view of bringing those into housing, our housing offer as part of our offer to people coming through Devon Home Choice and the other. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions from inside?
Thank you, Chair. I note, and it will be to the environmental health and street scene, there's antisocial behaviour wardens, and there was a review. You need to review the Exmouth hotspot pilot and assess if this can be extended in time and scope. Have we had a review, and when is it going to be coming, if it's coming through, and what was the outcome of it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Obviously, we're looking forward at the moment. That's something that we've got planned for this year. Last year, of course, where this came from was the OPC provided funding to do this. And because we're called a Tier 2 local authority, so we're not the top in terms of the antisocial behaviour issues, they provide the funding to the council to then go and procure the marshals, which is what we did. Very successfully, very positively received. Fortunately, the funding was forthcoming again for this financial year. What we don't know yet is if that money will be available again next financial year. So I've had a few initial discussions about what we can do if that isn't forthcoming, about some potential funding opportunities, and we might need to talk to the town council and what have you. But at the moment, if we're not going to get OPC funding, and that was £30,000 worth, then that's a major gap to try and find going forward. So it's a piece of work that we're looking at, and I think we put in for June for the target date, so we'll aim to achieve that.
Thank you, Chair. I just thought I'd take the opportunity to try and help Councillor Heath. I've just gone to the HRB agenda that's been published, and agenda item 15, section 19, talks there about the average void time of 70 days. I don't know if that helps you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, it does. It does. I'm just minded, I don't want to give too many specific examples, but there's been a property, social housing property in Branscombe that has been vacant now for coming up to about 9 or 10 months. And, obviously, ward members, if you like, residents will obviously observe that and complain about it, particularly because there's not a lot of social housing in Branscombe. So it's just sort of a point I'm making.
it was just to say that we will already be aware of that property, and obviously there are a number of different reasons as to why a property may appear to be left empty. There could be all sorts of different complications behind that. Not, you know, it may not just always be about how quickly we can get in and do the works and turn it around. There could be all sorts of different measures. So to just err on the side of caution when looking at individual properties, because, you know, the team will be aware of it. We will be working on it. There will be a plan, and it will all be in train, really.
Oops, sorry. On page, that's me, sorry. On page 79, when we talk about review and fees and charges, it says doing those in June, but we're reviewing fees now, they're coming into the budget now. So are you saying you can review it in June, but not bring it into next year? Because that will be out of kilter with the rest of fees and charges.
It's, unfortunately, things don't always fit into timescales, and it's a major piece of work, particularly the licensing one. So if there is an opportunity to make a mid-year amendment, then that's what we'd be looking to do.
Okay. As long as Tracy and Simon's happy with that, it's just we're discussing in part 2 fees and charges. And I know Mel in her section has got one on page 126 of her report where they're reviewing in June. So, Mel.
Yeah, just because licensing sat underneath me before it went over to Matt, just to clarify that with licensing, because it's a statutory process and there's certain things you have to do, it's often done at a different time to the normal fees and charges. So there's a number of areas that they're reviewing in licensing, and obviously they're doing them as soon as they can. That's the priority.
Fine. I wasn't aware of that, but thank you for that. Okay, but again, thank you, Catherine, for that report, and a very sound report. And I think that it's been said already that the movement in change and improvement we've seen over the last year, but we don't underestimate the amount of work you've still got to do over the coming year. But thank you very much for that. Well, I'm now going to move on to Simon. Well, it's a bit early to have a break. We'll do one more, shall we? We'll do one more. We'll do you first.
Are you ready?
Yeah, we're always ready for you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the Finance Directorate Plan, I suppose just to emphasise, most of the work that's carried out within the teams, within finance, is business as usual, statutory driven. So the exciting projects that Andrew mentioned to you that everyone got excited about, we're behind the scenes helping him, supporting him. So most of the areas covered in the directorate plans in the finance one are pretty business as usual type objectives, if you like. Having said that, the first one in terms of what the plan highlights, really proud of the work, and I think it's come across really well for the council in terms of the poverty strategy. Some really good work there, and that continues going through the year. And the life of this plan over the next two and a half years. So some really good work there done by Libby and her team, highlighted the various areas we're doing, building on the back of the voluntary day that we had here this time last year with the voluntary sector. That went down really well, and we're still working through that. Still, we're going to have more work in that area. And also, just to get in a bit of a plug now, in terms of the voluntary sector bid that's coming up later, a lot of that work that we're involved in there is through the CVS team as well. So just to highlight that. The other areas, and also just to say, we have had a visit by the DWP in terms of a pilot for our place-based work, and that is quite kudos really in terms of East Devon District Council being visited by the Department of Works and Pensions in terms of a particular pilot that they want to run with us. So just to highlight that. In terms of other pieces, you'd expect the financial strategy to be in there. So that was adopted in October time and now has come forward in terms of the budget that you'll have this afternoon. But we will revisit that in terms of where we sit with LGR. So the plan says that we'll come back to you in the summer, a refresh of the medium-term financial plan, financial strategy, and see where that sits in terms of the local government reorganisation. I've just lost my page. So the other areas I wanted to highlight, bear with me. So in terms of other projects, we're looking at, yeah, there you go. So we're slightly mundane, but really important, and hopefully members didn't see any disruption, but we've replaced our telephone system. That's gone well. It has helped within services of the council to provide their services and help streamline some of the core transactions that come in from customers. There's a second phase to that in terms of the technology that we can build upon, and that will be rolled out within the second part of this year. So there's some advantages in terms of how we support our customers, but also there's some efficiencies we can gain through that. Again, in the background, we've just replaced and gone live on a new income management system. So again, seamless from the customer's point of view, but gives them more options in terms of payments and does create efficiencies and savings for the council as a whole. An area that Libby Jarrett has been working on is in terms of our customer charter. So that's been written. We haven't gone live with it yet. We're still working out rollout in terms of training with staff within the organisation, but also key performance measures. So again, really important piece of work across the council. I've mentioned about the anti-poverty strategy. Also, the fraud strategy has gone live, and in terms of the delivery plan, that's now coming to audit and governance on a regular basis. So some really good work there. Payroll system upgrade, again, will hopefully be seamless, but we shall see. And we're doing a lot more work in terms of notifications to customers, so e-notifications. So council tax notifications going out electronically, but also things around sending out reminders using text, things like that. Just trying to modernise those areas, make it easier for customers, and make our processes more efficient. And then, I suppose, more mundane, but you want these things to happen. Really important that we keep on top of recommendations from external bodies in terms of Grant Thornton. So a big piece of work in terms of all the recommendations that come in from our external auditors, but also SWAP, our internal auditors, that we keep on track with those, implement them as required. And then something that has been, hopefully coming to the end of at the moment for the 24-25 year, is the audit of our accounts. So should be bread and butter, but producing accounts for local authorities, we've had difficulties. Most local authorities have had difficulties in the past in terms of meeting deadlines and getting the audit through in time. We're just coming to the end of that, so hopefully we've got a positive position to report to the Audit and Governance Committee in the next couple of weeks. But I think that's probably the main areas I wanted to highlight. Just quickly, in terms of the support, and I'm sure Mel will cover this off as well, but all the projects, there is the work required for the finance team in terms of supporting that. And we've also got an eye to local government reorganisation. So there'll be the big picture stuff that we'll be reporting through, but also at sort of service level, we're having conversations across Devon with our Revs and Bens colleagues sat in other authorities, just talking about the areas that we could be working on now in terms of aligning various schemes like the council tax support scheme and things like that, just to make a smoother transition, if you like. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Peter, you got a question? But he's still on somewhere.
No, it's all right.
Oh, thank you. With all this LGR and transferring assets over, probably in the next financial year, particularly things like car parks, do we know what impact that would have on our finances?
So that piece of work's ongoing and those discussions. Clearly, we're very mindful about the strategic assets of the council, such as car parks and the income that generates in terms of helping support the council services. So all those conversations are also around, we have best value requirements. We need to make sure that even though the last year of East Devon District Council setting its own budget could be 27-28, we still have a requirement to leave the authority in a good place in terms of that future organisation, that future authority. So all decisions made are taken in that light. So in terms of the question you're asking, I think big income earning car parks, on the face of it, that's something the authority would want to keep and pass over to a new authority. But there may be possibilities of packaging certain things. So if there are costs here, income generating here, then there may be a good business case to transfer some of those. But in the main, those big income areas you would want to retain for the new authority.
Okay, coming in, nobody outside, anybody inside? Duncan first, then Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Simon, on your report, page 14, which is 107 of the PDF, amongst the list of things you're not doing was the, or no longer going to do, the annual council tax empty homes thing. Now, I assume that's, the purpose of that is so that we can apply the correct exemptions when properties are validly empty, and also presumably we can apply surcharges for properties that are intentionally left empty where we could be collecting more council tax. So my question was, at what sort of scale are these properties in the district? Is this going to make a material impact on our finances one way or the other, or do I misunderstand the purpose of that work? Thank you.
Yeah, so it is a significant amount of work for the team. The emphasis of that has changed now in that empty homes are charged full council tax. So previously there was discounts applied. So it was beneficial for individuals to have their property empty, claiming those disregards. Now the switch over in it's actually double charge. There's more emphasis on a member of the public to provide evidence as to why it's empty. The benefit Sorry, did you get that? So it's switched around in terms of empty homes now are more expensive for people to retain.
Yeah, could you repeat that, Simon, because it won't be on the recording, you see, if you can remember what you said.
So there's a lot of work internally that we used to put into that because it was a reduction in the charge. Now with the empty homes and the increase in charges, it's actually the need for those checks aren't as relevant as they used to be.
Just come back on that though, that although there's no owners or interest from the property owner to report this because it's going to cost them more, there's an interest for us as a district to know because we could be charging them more. Are we missing out by not monitoring when properties are left empty?
No, because if a property's occupied, there's a person in it, and it's easy to record. So it's the adverse, isn't it? In terms of if it's empty, we're getting a double charge. We're not checking all the others that are occupied, if you like. I hope I've explained that right. I can have a conversation outside, but it's a reverse element now in terms of the charge.
Thank you. In your report, page 11, which is 104 on here, revenues and benefits, aligning council tax discounts once outcome of LGR in Devon is known to achieve consistency in policy and meeting financial strategy target. So that's to do with the council tax. With the LGR coming in, we don't know what's going to happen, but possibly all housing across the district, etc., and all housing, council housing, could all come under one thing. So will there have to be a review of rents and things like that as well, so that they're all aligned? I don't know how it works, and I don't know if anybody does.
So in terms of this particular item, is in terms of a local policy regarding council tax support. So those people on low income, the scheme that East Devon District Council's got in place to help support the payment of council tax for those on low income. At the moment across Devon, each council has set that themselves. They're slightly different. So what we're suggesting is before we get into LGR, we ought to look at those, try and prepare ourselves just see what the differences are and see if we can start aligning them so that when all the councils or a number of councils come together, it just makes it easier in terms of applying that scheme, it just smooths the path. In terms of council house rents and those elements, at the moment they're determined by legislation. So each authority has set their rents in line with that legislation, and that will continue. It's based on an individual property and tenant basis. So those will stay as is.
Thank you. Obviously, when I read this, I was a little bit concerned about our residents who are obviously already on that poverty line as it was. And I was concerned that if we were going to review this, then in the cost of living crisis that we're currently in, they're then going to be panicking about what extra additional charges they may get. So hopefully that might put their mind a little bit to rest. Thank you.
Any more questions? Tim?
Thank you, Simon, for your explanations. Just a couple of work streams of yours and how they interact. One was the customer charter, and one was the digitisation, if you like, of services. And I was just concerned on a couple of points. One is that customers often need non-digital contact, and hopefully that will not be being eliminated by what's being done there. Whether the customer charter takes on board that fact that people often need alternative ways of doing things. The other point I'd like to make, relating back to community resilience, which I asked about earlier, is that very often if electronic systems go down, then there needs to be alternatives in place to deal with that situation. Thank you.
So through the chair, you know, those elements and supporting those customers that are unable or can't use the digital facilities in terms of online applications and things like that, we're very clear and always have been as a council that there are alternative means for them to support those customers, including one-to-one customer face-to-face meetings and those sorts of things. So that's clear in our customer charter and will continue. In terms of the other piece you were speaking about, that's to do with our business continuity, and we're doing a lot of work on that at the moment. So in terms of if all our IT systems went down, how do we still function? We've recently done a case study on that and done role-playing, etc. So that is something that is really important to us, and is live through Matt at the moment on that.
Thank you, Simon.
Paula, and then you. Yes.
Just a quick question. On page 12 of the report, it says that only 98.5%, I know that's quite a high figure, percentage of council tax collected, so we're obviously losing a little bit. What does that actually equate to?
Ooh, that's a difficult one.
Roughly?
No, not roughly. I wouldn't want to guess and get wrong on that.
Okay.
It would be hundreds of thousands.
And how do we deal with that? What are our processes for trying to recover it, or do we just have to write it off?
No. Oh, sorry. So we've got a really good track record of collection, one of the highest in Devon, one of the highest in the country in terms of our collection and our outstanding debt levels on council tax. But there will be an element, you go through various means of collection that you won't be able to collect. You have to write off sometimes. How that's coped with is when you set your council tax for the year. So council will be getting a report as council tax base. So in terms of how much we think we can collect in council tax from individual properties in East Devon, that rate of 98.5% is built in. So the amount that we expect to take in council tax has been reduced by that sum.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. What we're going to reduce, etc., or stop doing, we're going to review services to be carried out at Exmouth Town Hall. Linking that with the customer charter, care charter, are we? I presume there's a registrar there and that sort of thing. Are we going to be able to continue that there? Because I'm going to say it's a service which is really desperately needed local for people, rather than putting it all online or moving it to having to come up here. Thank you.
So yeah, a specific question regarding the registrar, that stays the same. That's just an agreement to use that office space, basically.
Sorry, just a very quick one. On revenue and benefits, it states days taken to process housing benefit new claims. It says 19 days. As a general rule, I thought it was supposed to be tried to be done within 14 days or 2 weeks. Is that because the information that they've required for the new claims, they don't have all the information that they need, or is that just as it is, if that makes sense?
That would put us in the top quartile in terms of performance. So we're well within the required levels of turnaround, if you like, on that. That's actually to payment. So we've done an awful lot of work to. So it's about the time it takes to get all the information in. So actually, we try and get things right first time. So we're actually very good at that process. But it is about, yeah, you need to submit this evidence, that evidence, and getting it all in order to process the claim. But that is actually a good area for us in terms of how we perform.
Thank you. I assume that's what it was, but obviously, because it says 19 days, people might think, well, it takes us 19 days to do it, whereas actually what it is if you haven't got all of the information in front of you, you then have to keep going back to them and wait for their information to come through before you can do it. I think it might be worth somewhere in here putting that in, just because if somebody reads that and says 19 days for a new claim, if you're waiting to know whether or not you're going to be able to afford to stay in that particular accommodation, I just think that people read 19 days and think that's how long it takes us, whereas actually we're waiting for information to come in, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could go back to Councillor Dumper's, what he said about people are not digital. If you're not digital and you haven't got a computer, you rely on the post. I don't know about anybody else's area, but our posts, we don't get any post at all, hardly now. Fortnight, we still haven't had any post. Now, if you're going to change anything on this unitary or anything else, how are we going to let our customers know of any change? Are we going to, if the post office decide, because they're not decided what they're going to do yet, if they decide to not do the delivery for post, are we going to do our own delivery? Are we going to think of something different? Because not everybody, I know it's a big question, and I do bring it up quite a bit in housing. A lot of my customers don't even use mobile phones. So we're going to be stuck. If their rent's going to go up and they need to know, how are they going to know? I know it's a big question, but it's just a thought. The only thing I would think of is in your ward, you could deliver your own mail to the ones that are on the council properties. It's a possibility, but it needs to be taken into account because we're having all these changes, which is wonderful. The reports are wonderful. I know there's a lot of work in it and there's a lot entailed in it, but you have to look at the bigger picture as well. We're living longer, so you've got people living there that haven't got any technology at all. They've got no means of getting in touch with anybody. They don't use their mobile phones. What we're going to do, it's got to be considered because it is a big thing. It is a big thing. Thank you, Chair.
Would you comment at all on that, Simon?
I think Catherine's coming to my rescue by the looks of it.
I'm not sure about that. I think it's absolutely something that all organisations and all services have to consider, isn't it? It's how you still include those who are not yet digitally engaged and maybe will never be. So it's certainly something that from a housing perspective we're looking at, and providing services through our community hubs and things is critical in that piece of work. However, I can reassure that this is absolutely part of the customer charter, as Simon said earlier on. We're working really closely with Libby and the team to ensure that the whole purpose of the customer charter is that it's person-centred, so that we understand the individual needs of people. and that people are marked on our systems where we understand there maybe are additional needs or there's additional support that is needed to be in order to deliver to make sure that information is provided. So I think it's absolutely something that we are looking at. Unfortunately, we can't influence the way that Royal Mail is operating, but at the same time, we can try and mitigate against all of those services by providing telephone calls where we know people maybe aren't collecting mail or can't read the mail. You know, so there are pieces of work that are in train that we're trying to ensure that we're being as inclusive as we possibly can be. And I think my call to action probably would be is where you know that there are specific examples in your wards where you are concerned, then that is a piece of advocacy for maybe you to work with that tenant to try and find that additional support, maybe with citizens' advice or coming to us, you know, so that we can try and provide that support for people. So where you are aware of particularly vulnerable people, please do let us know and we will work with you to try and find a service for them.
Thank you. Any other questions? Right. Vicky?
Sorry, I just wanted to come back briefly then with that. Post office is different to Royal Mail. It's Royal Mail you've got the issue with. And to be honest with you, if you're not delivering if they're not delivering your post for 2 weeks, you need to take it up with Royal Mail and say to them, where's your post going?
Okay, right. Okay, right, Simon. I've got a question for you. I won't have many. I'll just have one. And it's a simple one, really. Is on page 107 of your report, you're no longer going to hold the poverty panel meetings, which I know were very well received by members. How can we make sure the good work and the questions is continued? Because I wouldn't want to lose the phenomenal work the poverty team do by not, because it was a very good meetings I went to.
Yeah, thank you for raising that, and I agree with you totally, Chair. So the work is still continuing. It's just that formality of coming to a committee on a regular basis. What we're proposing is to write an annual report to overview of scrutiny, whichever committee best sits with, in terms of just reporting on the actions we've done over the year. But believe me, the team is still carrying out that work. It's just the democratic element of coming regularly and writing reports. I think we've done the implementation. We're now into action, and I think it's just reporting those actions.
But it wouldn't mean we won't continue doing the excellent work that they did last year with that meeting, which was phenomenal for the volunteers.
Exactly. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Simon. Thank you again for another both report and the way forward for finance. What I would like to propose doing now is to break till just after 11:30. It's a bit earlier than we anticipated, but I think my view so far is it's the quality of the reports and the presentations by the directors and the fact you've had time to look at it, that actually it's not needed a lot of detail analysis by you. So thank you for your contribution so far. But what we will do now is have a break for 10 minutes, then review the rest of the day. Okay, thank you. That's what Simon, what he wants to do.
Check, yeah.
Right. So let's continue. I'm now going to hand over to Mel, who's going to talk about the governance side of the plans. Mel.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, quite an exciting time for my service, and I thought it might be useful just to give you a bit of an overview of the structure, because it's very much a new structure that we are still populating. So people and performance is one of the 4 service areas that I've got under me, which Gemma manages. And as you'll know, we've not had a performance manager in place since last July. So I'm pleased to report that we have a new performance manager starting next week. So that's really exciting, and it's going to enable us to, one, we will be rolling out our new performance system over the coming months, but most importantly, we'll be having that rigorous, regular reporting on all of these things so that members are fully aware as how we are performing as an authority. So that's really an exciting time from our point of view. Obviously, digital also sits under that people and performance, and obviously digital is a very important area, particularly with all the changes that we are making. So, yes, some exciting stuff going on in those areas. As you may know, we had a new AD start for comms, culture and marketing a couple of months ago now, Chloe, and we are now bringing culture, marketing, events into that team. So all of those areas are currently in the process of moving over. So we are adding new strings to our bow as a governance directorate, and we've got some exciting work plan in that area, which I'll touch on briefly. We have recruited a new AD for legal and governance, and they will be starting in early March. And that service area will cover elections, democratic, legal, and the procurement function, which is a new function for us because historically we've always been taking our procurement advice from Devon County Council, but we've not had a member of staff within the council who is also providing that support, but most importantly that oversight to make sure that we are complying with all the procurement procedures and doing everything that we should, that we're managing contracts appropriately, that type of thing. So that's going to be a really key role with some important audit actions that we will want to implement over the months once we have somebody within that procurement role. And then the final area that sits under me is programmes and strategies. And again, that's going to be a really exciting area because the individual who leads on that area will be implementing a new programmes and projects structure whereby we have oversight of all of the key programmes and projects that we have as an organisation. We have a project board that will be having that oversight. We have all the important structure around our projects that is needed, which, you know, is probably there across the organisation, but nobody is having that corporate oversight as one project at the moment. So fingers crossed, I hope I have secured an interim. I'm just in the break, been trying to negotiate terms for the interim, and hopefully they will be able to start within the next week. So that will mean that my management structure is then fully populated and will also enable me to take over the climate change and economic development functions that's been mentioned earlier that will then move into my service as well. So really exciting times that, you know, over the coming months we will be able to pick up some of those areas that we've really wanted to do, but we've not had the resources or the direction in place to do. In terms of some of the key activities that we've got coming forward, so the engagement strategy has been a key document that we've wanted to take forward, but we've not had the structure in place to do that. Now that we've got Chloe as the comms AD, we will be able to take that forward, and as part of that we'll also be continuing on the work that we've been doing about our engagement with towns and parishes. We did a survey at the end of the last quarter of last year, and we will now be taking that to the next stage in terms of working towards you know, an engagement strategy with our towns and parishes. As you'll know, we've been doing lots of work on our review of the Constitution alongside members of the Constitutional Working Group. There's still quite a bit more work to do on that, and between now and May we'll be reviewing a number of other areas. Gemma and her team have been doing fantastic work on launching the people strategy, and we've now got an action plan that we need to roll out and implement over the coming months and years. Some brilliant work done in that area, and the focus with that is making sure that, you know, as officers we're working very much as one team across the organisation, and that we are putting our officers in the absolutely best possible position for local government reorganisation. So, you know, they have the skills that they need to move into that new unitary or unitaries. Obviously, LGR preparation is going to be quite a big deal for my service area. So where you've got HR and staff records, you've got legal, you've got contracts, you've got data, you've got digital, all key areas where there's going to be a lot of work to prepare for LGR. Bit like Simon, we're clearly a support service on the whole, but obviously you can see from this, most of the actions are our business as usual actions. And I think you've got one line in there that says support for all the organisation's key projects. Well, as you can imagine, you know, the LATCO, asset devolution, leisure projects, all of those require significant support, whether that's from the people function, from the legal function, democratic services, data protection, all of those areas, and those all sit within my service area. So I can't emphasise how much work sits underneath all of that we really can't, you know, demonstrate in this directorate plan. Key area at the moment is the performance system, which Gemma has been doing a huge amount of work on. It's not been an easy ride, it's fair to say, our performance system, but we are nearly there now. We are hoping to have that rolled out by April, and the new performance manager that starts next week will, be getting to grips with that new system, and there's lots of things we can do with it and, improve our reporting. So that's a really exciting thing for us moving forward. I've mentioned the programmes and strategies and implementing a real project structure and board. That's a huge piece of work, but that's going to see some real tangible benefits for the organisation. So really excited about that. In terms of the digital team, they're working hard in terms of starting the rollout of SharePoint. Again, that's going to be really important for the organisation, will be great for our data retention and understanding what data we've got and making sure we've got all our safeguards around our data. So an excellent piece of work that will be going on in that area. In terms of the procurement side, I've briefly mentioned that that's a brand new area that we've got into. So we've just recently appointed a new contracts lawyer because we had no contracts expertise within the council. So that's going to make a huge difference, will mean that we won't be having to outsource a lot of contracts work. And then once the procurement manager is on board, that will complete that area of the work, and we'll be doing some really good doing some good work in that area. Risk, again, is something that fell under me but sat with the performance manager. That has now moved and is sitting under programmes and strategies. So when that corporate lead starts, hopefully next week, then they will be picking up risk again, getting going with risk, which obviously is been ongoing and has been monitored, but picking up that regular reporting to members so that members understand where we are with risks and making sure that it's constantly up to date. The marketing, culture and events is going to be really exciting for us in terms of making sure that we are maximising the income in those areas. So Chloe's really starting to get underneath all of that, and we will be doing some good work on that, and you'll see there's a number of actions in there, and that will be developing over the coming months. Then also mention in there delivering the culture action plan. So that's obviously now come over to us, and responsibility for delivering on that cultural action plan. So again, Chloe and her team are getting underneath that. So that's the main areas that we're focusing on. But as I say, there's a huge amount of projects that the council's doing. Some of those projects, we are still identifying the resource that is going to be needed for those projects moving forward. And therefore, I suppose the word of caution on my side of things is that, we've based our directorate plan on what we know is going to be happening now. But if things change and change over the coming months, then clearly we will have to reprioritise what we're doing, because our resources, it is fair to say, are very tight, and therefore we're obviously having to prioritise all these very key projects that we've got as an organisation. But yeah, exciting times. I'm really pleased that my structure is now coming together. So that's all from me, Chair, but happy to answer any questions that members have.
Okay.
Ryan.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Melanie. I see here on page 14, you've got a review of the services in Exmouth Town Hall. I'd like to ask if you intend to keep it open as a housing department. It's very, very busy in Exmouth Town Hall. I go in there a lot, obviously, and it's a very busy hall, and a lot of people who come in are single mothers with young children, and if it was to close, they'd have to come here to have interviews with people. There'll be nowhere else available if you close that, which is going to be extremely difficult. As Peter Faithful, the well-known bus traveller, can tell you, you have to catch 2 buses, and if you've got young children and you're coming here and you have to walk from the bus stop, it's going to be very difficult. So I'm wondering what you're actually going to do, please.
I'm just going to hand over to my kind colleague, David, who will answer that question.
Possibly. Is that coming to me? Yes, it is. So that's in my service plan, directorate plan, rather than Mel's. There's a report coming to Cabinet in February on that topic, so you'll be able to pick it up from that.
And that's all you're prepared to say?
I think it'd be, yeah, the report will come forward with details, yeah.
Any other questions for Mel? Vicky?
Hi, just two very quick ones. Firstly, it says ensure collaboration and engagement with town and parish councils for district-wide partnerships and services and regular engagement sessions with town and parish councils, including the provision of training. But the date for that is the 1st of October this year. And obviously town and parish councils are already getting quite concerned about what they could end up undertaking in the next couple of financial years. A lot of us are dual-hatted councillors, and we're aware that our own councils, parish town councils, are very concerned. So is that the date the training is going to commence, or is that hopefully the date the training is going to finish?
Can I just check with you which page you're on?
Oh, sorry, page 8.
So that is for the piece of work, including training, that we're doing on engagement generally. So about how we're going to engage, whether that's through newsletters, the ways that we're going to engage with towns and parishes. In terms of provision of training, that's ongoing. So as you'll know, last year, planning provided a number of training sessions. So I would expect that to be an ongoing thing all of the time. And obviously that isn't just my service, that will be across the entire council. So, you know, Andy's done a number of sessions, obviously, in terms of local government reorganisation. So we will continue to do that. So that's a very much a moving feast. So it, you know, that will be ongoing, even though that date is more about the engagement, what that we're going to be doing and developing that engagement strategy.
And my second bit, again, talking about provision of training, all councillors here have done DBS checks and we've all done various training, but it's still not up on our website. And I don't understand why.
It is on the website. So it has been on the website all of the time. I've had that issue raised quite a number of times. So I think if we try and search through our own system, it's very hard to find it. But if you do a Google search, it does come up. But I totally agree it's not in the easiest place to find. So we're going to move it so that it is, so that if you literally go to find members' declarations of interest, that there's a link there. So it ties in. It's been put in a place that sort of is on its own, and I think it needs to just go with the members' declaration of interest to make it more easy to find. So yeah, that's something that we're looking at the moment.
Sorry, if I could very quickly come back. If you actually click on East Devon District Council councillors and you click on my name, it's got declarations of interest, blah, blah, blah. And then at the bottom, it's got training, and there's nothing in it. So
we're also going to, this is something that came up within the last couple of weeks, we're going to remove reference to that because that's something historic, that there was an ambition to get all of the training on there. I'm not convinced that's the best use of our time as to where we are with LGR, so we're going to take that off because it just causes confusion.
Any other questions from anybody? No? Okay, well, I've got a couple, please. First of all, not a question, a statement. I'm delighted you've got somebody coming into the performance because that's something that we have known about for some time, and it will make a lot of difference. It would be easy for us all to analyse what information in performance we've got, so I'm delighted with that. Just two minor points is that the template you're talking about that's going to come out on last page 119 in February, is it definitely going to come out in the new template of meetings, reports?
It is overdue, but it's just been that we've had to prioritise other things. So no, I mean, the template is ready. It's more about giving the managers the training to use the template. So that's what the hold up has been. So absolutely, the team are working on that as we speak.
And the last point was on whatever page number, page 116, you're talking about the people strategy. Have I missed it? Has it come out and been shared with members yet, or is it going to be? Because it seems a really important piece of work.
I'll let her.
Thank you. What did you call me? I didn't even hear it.
So the People Strategy launched in November. So that is public now, but Personnel Committee, again, sort of with timelines, Personnel Committee is at the end of this month, and a report will be coming with the full details on that.
Thank you. Okay, with nothing else, then thank you very much, Mel, for another excellent set of plans. What I would do is just summarise and thank all officers and directors who have put these together. And with your permission, I would like us all to... Oh, yeah, I'm going to come back to you, John. I will come to you to finish off, John. But what I would like is for us all, the recommendation to accept this by Cabinet. Could you, by Council, would you agree that this... You agree that all these plans go to, is it Cabinet first or go to Cabinet first? Oh, right. Oh, so we have done that, so I don't need to. So we recommend to note all the 4 reports. We don't have to do anything else.
Okay, Simon's saying that we normally recommend them to Cabinet. So, yeah, if you're happy to recommend them to Cabinet, then we'll follow the normal approach.
From the Chair, if I could recommend it goes to Cabinet, we all in favour? Thank you. Right, I'd like John, as Cabinet member, to finish off.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I say something which I think if the leader were here, he would also say, but probably a little bit more eloquently than me. But just before I say that on behalf of Cabinet, I'd like, just as portfolio holder, just to say regards to Mel. From Mel's perspective, I'm really pleased that it does now at last, it does feel as if this has been a long march for you, has got to a point where we think she's going to have a full team to support her, because it has been, and Catherine will know from her past experience as well, that when you don't have the full support below you in terms of the ADs and everything else, it then does make your life incredibly difficult, and it creates problems in how you can work efficiently and effectively. And it's also a big personal issue because it does impact upon your life. So that's me as a portfolio holder. On behalf of Cabinet, Chair, I'd like to reiterate what you've just said, which is thanks to all the directors for the reports that have come here today, and particularly thanks to all the staff who work with them and alongside them as well, because it is one team at the end of the day, and hopefully we are part of that one team as well. And like I always say, that we're all cogs in the machine. If you take one cog out wherever you are in that machine, it will have an impact upon the way the organisation operates. So a big thanks to the directors for the plans, which have been culled together from working with their colleagues. Thanks to their leadership as well, because this organisation needs the leadership that our officers give us, as well as the support that they give us. You will have all noted the large amount of work that sits behind these plans. And what we have in front of us today, Chair, is some of the detail, but each and every member of staff will be then drilling down into what we see here as high level, and then trying to put that into operation in their day-to-day activity. And as I say, everybody is interconnected. So I hope that what we have seen presented today is a very professional set of presentations, professional directorate reports. I think it's important to emphasise that I think that there are very positive relationships between individual portfolio holders and their directors, the ADs, and the teams that they work alongside. And I think there is also a good and positive relationship between the ELT and Cabinet. And I hope that comes through, Chair, in the way in which we all do our business and how we're able to deliver for our residents. So I was going to commend the plans to you. You've done that. So just a final thank you on behalf of Cabinet.
Thank you, John, for that sum up. Well, with that, this part of the meeting is over. Now we're going to go into finance, and I'm going to hand over to Anne, who's going to chair this part of the meeting. Do you want me to go there and you come here? No, fine.
Thank you, Chair. Now I'm Chair. As we're running ahead of schedule, we're going to hear agenda item number 9, the draft revenue and capital budgets for 2026-2027. Simon Davey, our Finance Director, will be presenting these. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. This is how I envisage this section happening. So I give a presentation in terms of an overview of the budget at a high level, the key areas within it, what it looks like, take any questions from that. Then, as part of the report, hopefully you've noticed, there is a little thing that says 26-27 budget book. So if you hit on that, that gives you the detailed budget behind the summary report. So an opportunity, Chair, will give you an opportunity to ask questions from that at a detailed service level. Hopefully we can answer those questions for you. From the report, you will have gathered that there are a number of what we call special items, bids that have come forward that at the moment aren't within the general fund budget. So we're assuming that you'll want the conversation on those, a bit more detail, and then considering what recommendations you might want to put back to Cabinet on those items. And then finally, what we're looking for is both committees to make your recommendations to Cabinet so that they can then make their considerations and recommendations onto Council. So just to outline the budget process, so Cabinet have already met, agreed initially the budget that you're now considering in this joint meeting today on the 14th. The Housing Review Board meet next week and consider a similar process, but looking at the housing revenue account, looking at those budgets. And both these your committees, the Housing Review Board, will make their recommendations onto Cabinet, who meet on the 4th of Feb. They'll consider the budget, your recommendations, and then make their final recommendations to Council when you all meet on the 25th of February to propose the budget, set the council tax, set the council house rents. So it's just to put it into context. So our budget's in 3 main areas. You've got the general fund, day-to-day services. You've got the housing revenue account. As I said, the Housing Review Board will look at that. And then you've got the capital budget. The one with the more complicated area, if you like, is the general fund. Housing Review Board will look at the housing revenue account, and that has complications as well. But the general fund is significantly more complicated perhaps than capital, which is just made up of single schemes, and perhaps they're easier to look at in that you can turn the tap off or turn it on with those schemes. General fund's more complicated in that all our services sit within the general fund. So in terms of looking at the general fund budget for next year, 2 key external factors. I've been your finance section 151 officer for many years. I've been saying about possible changes coming along in the finance regime in terms of how the government may assess what grant it gives to us. It's finally here. So 26-27, you've got something called the Fairer Funding Review. So that's where government is setting up a new formula in terms of how it's going to fund councils from 26-27 onwards. That has had a significant implication on us. We thought it would do, mainly around business rate income. That was set out in our financial strategy, so we had a way forward. So you've got the 2 things, Fairer Funding Review, the implications of that, externally driven, and then just the small matter of local government reorganisation. So in theory, we've only got 2 more years of setting a budget for East Devon District Council. 26-27, the year you're looking at now, and then 27-28. So the financial strategy that was adopted by Council the latter part of last year looked at how we will balance the budget, because you've got a significant deficit set up in our medium-term financial plan,
big driver for that was the reduction in business rates because of the fairer funding review. Also considering that you've only got a couple years left, possibly. That's the proposal at the moment, but there is the risk that if local government reorganisation doesn't happen to that timescale, what happens to 28, 29? So in that strategy, you set out use of reserves to help balance, and that's quite right in that this council, with that known reduction in government income, had set aside or has set aside reserves to help you have a smoother line, if you like, to help balance budgets as you go forward. We also looked at an area that you can use capital to fund revenue expenditure under certain circumstances, and our LATCO expenditure, mobilisation costs, fits that criteria. So what that means is some revenue expenditure, 955,000 we've got over a 2-year period, you can actually use capital receipts to help fund that, and that takes it out of revenue and helps us with our general fund. So that's one of the areas we were going to look at. Then the final area, perhaps the more difficult area, is how we find savings to balance the budget. So we set a target of 1.5 million. That was a stretch target. So we didn't need all of that. If you just looked at a 2-year period, you could have used your reserves to balance off 27, 28. But there was that risk that if you have to set the budget for 28, 29, LGR's delayed, all your reserves would be gone and you'd have a significant deficit to find. So with that in mind, council set a stretch target of 1.5 million for next year in savings to give you some reserves left in 28, 29 to help you. So that's the strategy, and that's what's actually been followed now in the budget that's being presented to you for next year. So the outcome of the fairer funding review was as we predicted, bad news really. So we're one of the worst affected councils. Hit double whammy, I suppose. One in that we did particularly well out of business rate income. That has now dropped significantly. It's been rebased. So we've lost that. But in addition, district councils haven't done particularly well out of the formula anyway. So those two elements have given us the bottom calculation, if you like. So what the government has brought in is a safeguard, if you like, that no authority will get less than 95% of its existing funding, if you like, for the current year, 25, 26. So it looks at 25, 26 and says, okay, going forward, although your income levels from government will drop significantly, we're going to safeguard you at that 95% level. Which on the face of it, is a 5% reduction, but having said that, it's more complicated than that because it's what you take into account as your base. So things like they've assumed that you're going to get extra money in council tax income, so that's part of your extra income that the government has taken into account. Also, things like inflation aren't taken into account, so you've got to allow for that within your budget as well. So looking at a year-on-year comparison, we're down about 1.1 million. If you look at the 25-6 budget against the budget for 26-27, looking at business rates and other grant income, we're down 1.1 million that we've had to find. In addition to that, and we'll come on to it a bit more later, other grants have also come out which weren't part of that calculation. So the UK SPF scheme, we got 466,000 in the current year. We've used it on particular objectives that the council wanted to explore, wanted to promote. That has come out for 26, 27. The good news is you have got a balanced budget, but we are using 871,000 from our risk reserve. But that's what we planned. It is a strange thing for me, balancing a budget from reserves, but it is what government's expecting. For those authorities that were significantly hit by the fairer funding review, in various documentations, various meetings I've had with the department, they were looking at those district councils, and it is mainly district councils. Some London authorities have been hit quite hard as well, that have been hit by the fairer funding review. They've also looked at our balance sheet, looked at reserves, and they are expecting those authorities to use reserves to help balance their books going forward. So we are taking 871,000 from reserves. Within your report is on 6.3 of the actual budget report, gives a portfolio summary. So that goes through portfolio by portfolio, your individual budgets. And I've mentioned then there's a link to the budget book, which gives the individual details. I've also mentioned at the moment, we've got a number of bids totaling 360,000 that aren't in the budget. So they've come forward from officers, request for these to be considered, but in putting the budget together, the affordabilities come into it. They're also quite new items. A number of those, as you'll see, were previously funded by the UK SPF grant. That gone, now not part of our core budget. So there's a consideration with those items. Just the headlines in terms of council tax, in terms of residents. So the draft budget is proposing a 2.99% increase. That's £5.14 a year increase in your Band D council tax for the district council. That's at the referendum level, the highest that we could go to without having to have a referendum. I did, as part of the consultation response, one of our requests from this council to government was we're at the lower level, where our average council tax is much lower than most district councils. Could we at least come up to the average in setting our council tax? But the government have been very clear, those referendum levels are in place, and that's the maximum we can go to. There's a little bit of accountancy in terms of we're using 300,000 from our general fund balance, bearing in mind the risks of the council, bearing in mind LGR, we've lowered the level that we believe the top end of where our general fund should sit. So that's released 300,000. And then just a final comment on the budget generally, you've got the fees and charges schedule attached to the budget as well for your information. So that goes through in terms of through to council in terms of approval. So if we look at future years, in terms of the implications of the 26-27 budget, what we did was try and set the 26-27 budget with an eye to the future, 27-28 and 28-29, in terms of not having that cliff edge in 28-29 if it comes to it. And what I mean by cliff edge is suddenly having to find 4 million in balancing our budget, no reserves, the only place to go to is your services. So cutting services by 4 million in 1 year is a significant change in terms of what this council delivers. So if you think what we'll have left, so we're taking 900,000 from our medium-term risk reserve in 26-27. That leaves us with 2.8 million in that reserve. Although maybe less than that after your consideration of the special items, but just bear that in mind. We've got 1.8 million sat in our transformation reserve that in our strategy, we're going to transfer into just our general reserve now in terms of ability to use it to balance the budget. So if you take those two together and we've got further headroom in our general fund, that gives us reserves available going forwards of 5.6 million. Our estimated gap for 27-28 is 2.8 million, 28-29 is 4 million. So using all our reserves, what we're saying is, these are estimates, things change, but reserves available, looking at our budget gap for 27-28, 28-29, if we get there, then we're looking at a gap of 1.2 million in 28-29, which is still substantial, but is more doable in terms of service reductions. That's more about finding efficiencies, stopping doing some things, but it's not about radical cuts in services. So that's what your strategy was, and that's what's now being played out in terms of the individual budget. What I am suggesting is what we do is bring you an update of our medium-term financial strategy in June, July time. We can get a clearer picture of what those future deficits look like, but also we should have a clearer picture of LGR. Whether we're having to set a budget for 28-29 or whether 27-28 is our last year, you've got those reserves sat there. What do members want to do? So that's just the overall picture in terms of the future for the general fund. I did have some slides on the housing revenue account, which we can save for the Housing Review Board, but just to give this committee some reassurance, it's a balanced budget. We had savings to find, they are within the budget, and we're making the commitments of paying back into reserves, as we said we would do for the housing revenue account. The final element of our budget is the overall capital programme. You'll find in 4.6 of your report a summary table which shows the capital position. Net expenditure is 11.8 million, which after taking funds, funding out of that, leaves 7.9 million. The HRA has to find 9.6 million, and that is factored into the housing revenue account budgets. And interestingly, perhaps from an accountancy point of view, but there's a positive position on the general fund capital because there's a forward funding coming forward of 1.7 million. I suppose just to highlight, in the budget book, you'll see the capital programme with all the individual schemes that are being proposed going forwards. They're based on the work of the BSCAP group in terms of the recommendations that they put forward for the capital programme after considering scheme by scheme. So thank you, Chair, in terms of an overview of the budget. Happy to take questions at that level and then perhaps move on to the individual budget book.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon, for your in-depth analysis. Anyone from outside committee, first of all, want to speak on anything? No. Then coming into committee, I see Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Aaron. Hopefully this is the right time to ask my question. I appreciate all the work you've done, Simon, and it looks very complicated, and you seem to have done a splendid job. However, my question is, there's a considerable amount of debt attached to your work and attached to the work we intend to do. If, heaven forbid, tongue in cheek, the local government reorganisation goes belly up, are we in a position to finance what's in place now for the next maybe 4 or 5 years if it all collapses?
Simon?
Yep. So the borrowings for local authorities comes under the Prudential Code, which basically means anything that the authority sets out in debt, borrowing, it has to evidence that it can afford that. So in any of our plans, our capital programme, or any individual business cases you receive, where we're talking about borrowing, it's under that basis that the authority can afford to make those debt repayments going forward. And we would also be obliged to make sure we're not setting up debt that could not be afforded for a new authority either. So part of my role, but also part of various documents that this council signs off annually in our treasury management strategy, is about our level of debt and how it can be afforded, and it has to be afforded.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else got general questions, etc., before we actually, I think, go to the special items which we've got to consider? Yehudi?
But to ask you, Simon, on page 138, there's a lovely table with a lot of numbers for the general fund revenue budget. When I look at the last two items, the budget requirement and the reported council tax requirement, the figures for the difference don't tally with the figures for the other two figures. I think they tally in everything else, but right at the end, I've got, for example, 11.2 million minus 11.6 million doesn't come to 1.6 million.
I haven't noticed that. It is just a variation column, so it's not fundamental. But yeah, so we'll correct that in the budget book. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with a general? Mike?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Simon. A couple of points. Could you explain on the net interest, where one is, this is on page 138, one's decreased by 518 and the PWLB is increased, we're going to make 252. Could you explain the differences and what that actually means?
So the page number, just to repeat for all members so we know where we are, it's on page 138. So it's in the summary table for the general fund. The interest receipts, so that's the money, so it's a negative sum here, it's a good thing. That's the money we receive in from our various investments. That's dropping mainly because there's two factors in that. One is our prediction of where interest rates are going over in 26, 27, but also our holding of cash is actually reducing in terms of a number of capital programs that are now coming on stream, whereby we would have been given some grant funding or Section 106, various cash that we're holding. We're now actually delivering on a number of items, which means the cash is going out the door, being spent, so we've got less money to invest. So there's two factors coming in there in terms of reducing the sum of interest receipts. And in terms of interest payable, the reduction there, it's only a slight reduction, 252,000 on those sorts of numbers, is based on two things as well. Our prediction on interest rates falling slightly, so that will reduce our payments. But also the work that the BSCAP group did in terms of looking through our existing capital programme, being realistic about what will be delivered over the next 2 years. And we've rebased, we took out a number of schemes that have been sat in our programme for a number of years, won't be delivered, taken them out or slipped them several years. And that, in effect, has reduced our debt charges as well.
Thank you. Really, the second point is the same question I asked at Cabinet, which still concerns me, and I'm sure it does you, is on page 141, the Markham £4 million. I wonder if you could tell committee what could happen and what are the options, because that is a significant amount of money that's going to have to be found some way within the next few years or so.
Thank you. I might add, my colleagues might want to add to what I say, looking across, but you're saying no. So it is a risk. It is a risk, as was highlighted at Cabinet, in that at the moment our draft budget, we've got, in the current year, 350,000 was approved for work on Malcolm. We also had government funding in of an equal sum, so that's being used in the current year. But our budget for 26-27 at the moment doesn't have any funds come in. We're in discussions. We're trying to work out different ways of how we might fund that. I'm hearing positive signs. I think we're going to have to bring a report back to show how that will be funded, the work required. But I'll give our director a chance to add to that.
Andy, do you want to add something?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose the point I make to Simon occasionally is that, can we afford to do this? Always the real question, can we afford not to do it? And I think, I'm looking at the backs of Councillors Bloxham and Blakey, for example, and the experience from Cranbrook, and this is about applying the learning from that. I think we know, and this is something absolutely recommended by the New Towns Task Force report as well, that we need an assertive delivery vehicle in situ up front. It's not something we can, leave at risk, and that needs, to be a statutory vehicle with the relevant powers and capacity. That's where that figure derives from, because we're aiming ultimately at some form of development corporation. We have, received much more fulsome support from Homes England during the course of this year. We know there are negotiations at a national government level around, having identified, well, hopefully we get into the final shortlist or final list of national new towns, but there will be a budget line there centrally as well. And, we're hopeful that we'll be able to access that. But clearly at the moment, we don't know. There's some ambiguity there. We're waiting for that clarity. Just on the last point that Simon mentioned, there will be a further report to Cabinet in April, which I'm hoping will be the right time, because that will allow us to have resolved some of the ambiguity and get some of that kind of clarity, both from Homes England and critically also MHCLG, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Perhaps have we got any questions about the budget book at all, please? Because from outside, is there a question coming in? Peter?
I meant to ask, of our reserves, what have we got left? How much are we taking out and what have we got left?
So the report covers off the 819,000 that we're taking out of the risk reserve for next year's budget to balance. We're not predicting that we're going to take anything from reserves in the current year in terms of our outturn position. And then in the report, I've highlighted the amounts we've got in those readily available reserves to help us balance the budget. So I went through those on the screen and also they're in the book itself. But also, Peter, in terms of our other reserves that we hold, so we do hold other reserves for specific use. I suggest, and I can give you a heads up, when we do our outturn report, if you look at last year, you'll see our balance sheet, you'll see a report that went to Cabinet June time that gives all our reserve levels at what level they're at. We'll be reducing the same at the end of the current financial year. So that's the best place to look to see all the reserves. If there's anything specific, I'm happy to deal with it on a one-to-one basis. So it's 819 that's coming out, or 17.
Thank you. I will kick off as I can't see any hands. As we are really into our tree planting, etc., I would like to know if there's actually a budget line for arboriculture within the street scene, because we need to be maintaining trees, especially in our parks departments, parks and open spaces, where it's not just the reactive maintenance, it's actually preventative. Having known in the last 3 years, 4 trees falling down in a park in Exmouth, which could have been disastrous for us. So I would like to ask Simon, is there actually a budget line for arboriculture? And if not, I would like to propose there was one. Thank you.
So the simple answer is yes, there will be in terms of staffing and resources required. You kindly gave me a heads up that this question was coming, so I did. There might be more detail that Andy might want to add.
Thank you. Andy.
Thank you, Chair. So I have explored that. I haven't quite got to the bottom, but I think the question is there enough there, given we've got instances of ash dieback? Is the inspection regime adequate now? Does it need to be better resourced? I don't have a full answer to that. It's not something that's been flagged. Obviously, in the special items, there are requests from street scene around operational pressures. So this isn't one of those that's come forward through that process. But certainly I can take it away and make sure, because I think it's going to be looked at, if I'm right, through overview as well, and there may be an avenue as well there, Chair.
Thank you, Andy. I brought it up because I actually had spoken to one of your arboricultural guys, and he said, really, we haven't got a proactive budget. So I'd like to see that. Jeff, did you want to say something?
Yes, just to say that we have got in-street scene staff that specialise in this. They are really experienced. We've also trained further staff up to use chainsaws. Not the most recommended thing to do for health and safety, but we are on top of the tree issue, but then we only need one storm. For instance, last week in Cornwall, but no, millions of trees came down. So that we wouldn't have enough funds to cover for that. We would have to look at other ways. But yeah, there's a lot of, unfortunately, trees do die. Unfortunately, trees do need replacing, and we've got staff to cover that, but not for big emergencies.
Thank you, Jeff. coming back into any other questions about the budget book at all?
Yes, I've got several, please.
I'll kick over to you, Mike.
Okay.
So, Mike, thank you. On page 5, there is, we got there staff increases or staff 2025 to 2026-7. And I note that there's a increase of nearly 30% under that line from 48.8 to 58. I would have thought somewhere, unless I've missed it, it needs to come in the information of why is that? And I think I know some of the answers, but it's quite significant to see a 30% increase on that line.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair, if that's right. So we're looking at the general fund FTE increases.
Yes.
Yes. So I think you're right in terms of there does need to, because I've been through and looked at these as well.
Yeah.
There perhaps does need to be more explanation put on. In the majority, so where you've got some big increases, and it was particularly around legal services we've discussed. Mel's covered off some of the extra resources that have gone into there. But in terms of, so you've got council tax, housing benefit admin, you've got 4 in there. You've also got a number in our homeless team. And you've also got a number in our digital team. Mainly most of these were whereby staff were on temporary contracts, particularly around our Ukraine scheme and those elements, that now we've had funding in for a few years, we've actually included them as permanent contracts, or we've captured them in this exercise. So actually, I think that's why more explanation is required, because the overall funding position isn't at that level, in that there are external funding that are covering off posts, or it's just a matter now that the budget is reflecting the true position on temporary posts that are now in the scheme, if you like.
Thank you. It's just known exactly what you've said in, right, on page 12, there are 2 points on page 12.
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Could Councillor Goodman refer to the sort of the
Page number? Or?
Yes, because it's not tallying with.
It's on the budget book.
We're in the budget book.
We're in the budget book, John.
I do beg your pardon. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
You'll find the budget book attached to the report itself. Yeah.
Under the budget book, page 12, it's got corporate activities. In 2025, it's a minus, and now it's a plus. And the other in the same is the org development services, now a plus of 395,000. I just wonder what the explanation of those two. Now, if I've missed it in the spill, I apologise, but I couldn't see it.
So I'll start off, and luckily John Symes is also in the meeting, and he might suddenly disappear quickly. So it is in the introduction in terms of the report that what we've had is a significant change around of services within portfolios. So most of this is around where we've changed where people report, where teams are reporting. Ideally, we would have updated 25, 26 to reflect that, but time-wise, and it means changing our finance system. I think that's the overarching. I don't know if there is anything you wanted to add to that, John? Or?
Anything to add, John?
No, just exactly that, Chair. It is a case of where staff and services have moved around a bit. Exactly that, we'd have to, in order to reflect it in 25, 26, it's system changes. So it's possibly that we could look into that if that's required.
Thank you. Then on page 18, finance portfolio, it's got HSG and council tax admin, that's increased by 352,000. Is that the different way of doing it now, or what's? Sorry, page 18. Page 18, yeah.
That will be staffing increases generally within there in terms of pay awards and things like that. But also within that scheme, the FTEs, if you remember, went up by 4. That was a true increase in that we've got a number of new schemes coming in and we've got burdened funding to cover them off. Right. So you've got significant changes in housing benefits and in business rates. So we brought in some temporary staff in those areas to help us, and that will lead to additional costs. But it is covered off by burdens funding in the main.
Thank you. The very last one is page 22. Public conveniences have increased by 192,000. Is there a reason for that?
I'll look across in case I get this wrong, but I'm certain it's whereby with the public conveniences programme, we assumed a level of savings that we've had in our budget for the last 2 years, that we're now reflecting the situation that we're out to review on that in terms of going forward in our programme.
Yeah, that came up because we were going to charge and we thought we were going to get more, and the timing of them in place was delayed as well, wasn't it?
It's a combination. The main area is the expenditure.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone come up with any more questions? I've got one regarding the train station toilets. I know it's rather specific in Exmouth. Is it actually within the budget for this year to continue them because they were supposed to be closed?
Well, the answer is yes.
Thank you. That was nice and easy.
Andrew would have given you a more
succinct.
not succinct, flowery answer, but the answer is yes.
Thank you. And I would say it's not in the budget book, but fees and charges schedule, I noticed we have allotments, and I have given you the heads up. Where are they? And as we have charges for water, what do we charge for them? Thank you. Andrew.
So that's me. Thank you, Chair. So we have 2 allotments, both in Sidmouth. One is adjacent to the cemetery and is effectively a meanwhile use because its ultimate purpose will be an extension of the cemetery. And the other, I think, is leased from in the Byes area from the National Trust. So that's what we have.
Thank you. No more questions on the budget book. Do we want to look at, before we, fees and charges? Any questions on fees and charges? Or are we quite content with all that you see there in front of you?
Can I just come in? I'm going to say exactly the same what I said in Cabinet. I'm really very pleased we're going for this way of doing the fees and charges by increasing by inflation, and that unless there's a reason to increase more or not increase at all, I think it's the right way forward. And when I see other councils, what they've done with some of their fees, I think us bringing in line here and doing it each year is the right way. And I know it's somewhere in the report, but I don't think we should underestimate that that is the right thing for our residents as well when they're trying to look at their expenditure. And I just think it should be noted because it did come to this committee last year with Tracy's idea, and I think it was the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mike. Then if we now look at the items on the Appendix 1, draft revenue budget, special items.
Sorry, just a very brief question. So I've noted that in the changes for 2025 to 2026, the fees and charges have gone up on pretty much everything, which we were expecting because obviously fees are going up. but they haven't gone up with HMO at all. In environmental health, number of occupants in accommodation, that charge hasn't changed for any of those. Is there a reason for that? Is it because we don't have any?
Simon?
Might have to take that away unless, yeah, we'll take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. It's just that there's HMO, but there's also, there was another one I noticed just now, sorry.
What page?
Park Homes check. It is, oh no, you're asking, page 22. So there are a few that don't have any changes, and I was just wondering whether or not that's because there's a reason that there's no changes for those. Sorry, everything else seems to have gone up very slightly, but there are a few that don't seem to have gone up at all.
Yeah, well, we'll check specifically on those you've mentioned. In general, there will be ones where we're waiting for legislation. So the planning ones, for example, we follow legislation on those. They may be part of that, but I don't know for certain. We'll check on the HMO ones that you're raising.
They're under environmental health on here, but it could still be planning, I'm aware.
Thank you. Going now to the Appendix 1, the draft revenue budget special items. I think we've got time to consider certainly the item number 1, play park consolidation study of £20,000 on a study across the district with 80 play spaces, high numbers of small sites in our bigger towns. Anyone got any thoughts or comments whether we should be actually putting additional funding into doing a study at this stage or not? Anyone outside the committee? Any comments? No, inside, you want to say something, Mike?
I just wonder if the officer or the portfolio holder or the director could explain why this is important.
Do you want to come in, Chair?
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm having problems with my screen here. Yeah, carry on, Andy.
Thank you. So this originally started off as part of, I think, the BSCAP, the capital bids, and obviously it's ultimately a revenue study. I think it's important when we look at our portfolio, which is obviously extensive, 80 play spaces, they've come to us in various different guises. And the intent behind this is to ensure that we have a complete understanding of the obligations that are extant to the legal basis upon which those play areas are provided, because that affects how we can move forward. As it says, consolidation, there is an opportunity to think about how we ensure potentially, I want to say rationalisation, but not to the extent of, removing facilities, but making sure maybe there's an opportunity for a larger play area with better equipment and not to have quite so many in such close proximity. But obviously that does need an understanding of our legal obligations in terms of how those need to be provided, including in respect of Section 106 agreements, for example. So that's the purpose behind there. I suppose in wider local government reorganisation terms, as well, if we're thinking about needing to understand our assets in detail going forward, this is part of that approach as well.
Thank you for that explanation. Any comments at all? Brian?
Thank you. I think these play parks are very important for the children. They're educational and they keep the children socially adhered, and more importantly, the parents know where they are. So I think we ought to do our very best for play parks. I would like to say that the one at Carter Avenue in Exmouth, which has been recently, a new one has been put in, it's excellent, and it's well used every day of the week. There's children there till 6, 7 o'clock at night, even in the winter, because they've got street lights very close to it, so, and all the local people use it, so. And also I'd like to mention, if it's the correct time, I shall be told in a minute, the dinosaur park at Exmouth is very, very popular, but it is in need of, a lot of equipment is in need of replacing. And if that could be, when Simon's doing his budget, if he could find a few £100,000 for that, because that really is the most popular place in East Devon for children to play. And let's try and keep the standards up on that, Simon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. before we go on to Tim, can I ask Simon, we've got quite a few play areas being planned out to be refurbished. Is the dinosaur one in amongst that? Do you know?
I don't believe so, but Jeff wants to come in on that.
Jeff, over to you.
The dinosaur one is in on Queen's Drive, which I don't think is included in. It's a separate funding to the normal play parks in housing estates.
Yes, because it's not actually a residential area at all, is it, down there? So it's got a different funding stream. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And also it's not Exmouth itself. It's for the wider area. It's for the benefit of people that visit the beach. So it's in a separate funding gap.
Thank you. Councillor Dumper?
Very formal. Yeah, I'm not going to concentrate on dinosaurs here. We've had this discussion before. What I would say is that as a comment on what's been said about rationalisation, looking at the numbers, etc., is that in the bigger towns there are lots of fairly scattered estates, and children, obviously little children particularly, need to be able to walk to these. So the actual distribution of them, I think, within the area is important, and I wouldn't like to see this looked at as a rationalisation exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Aurora Bailey?
Thank you, Chair. I do know there are some of our parks in Exmouth that are going to be looked at by Stock. They're looking at the one up there because I'm in contact with the engineer, David Kirk, who's very helpful. If you want to know anything about parks, if you let David know, he's very helpful. He gets back to you. And I'm on the parks because I like the park, obviously Dinosaur Park. I've always been passionate about it, so I'm on it.
So are we looking, any thoughts, Mike?
I'd just like to ask Andrew, two things, Andrew. What would be the outcome if we didn't agree this? What would be the net loss to us? And secondly, why didn't the officers put this in the budget when the budgets were first formed? Is this a late request for a reason?
Shall I just take the last question, if that's all right, Andrew? So these items have come on mainly because they're new. So it's highlighting there's something new that we just, at officer level, I feel uncomfortable putting items in the budget that are new without highlighting to members. So that's part of it in terms of there wasn't a standard budget in for this. So it's being highlighted to you for your consideration. Also, with this one, it was following the capital route and would have been considered by BSCAP. Level for capital is 20,000. So at that point, it had to get switched out to revenue. But sorry, I just thought it was worth adding that before Andrew came in.
Thank you, Chair. And on the first part, I think in terms of, why is this needed? I think it's to ensure that we have a complete, and factual baseline to understand our obligations. As has been highlighted, Dave Cook runs a very successful kind of rolling programme of, replenishment, refurbishment of play areas, but understanding our obligations is key to that kind of, understanding that kind of programme management, but also, as I say, in relation to local government reorganisation, where those assets sit in the future, you can see that part of the completeness, if you like, of having an asset plan more generally as well.
So this is actually to try and give a smooth transition over to LGR. It's not really going to be gaining for our residents at the moment, but it will be future-proofing the provision.
Yeah, I think there's two dimensions to it. One is to inform our own capital investment programme as we move forward, and BSCAP, as Simon has highlighted, in terms of what happens next year and the year after. But also there has to be, an obligation on us to, part of the work we need to do around implementation planning for LGR is to make sure we've got a complete, accurate understanding of all of our assets, of which the play spaces are part.
Thank you. Any comments? Vicky?
So my understanding is that historically developers would build a play park. Once they built a housing estate, they had to build a play park, and then that play park was then taken on by the local district council, and we had to basically pay for any repairs, etc., that done with it. The current way that things are done is that if a residential development is built, they then build a play park and a maintenance charge is done on the houses on that residential development. So, I mean, the statement in here states, however, we need to establish what we legally can and can't do first. Well, surely that's the first step to see whether or not we can, whether or not we have to legally refurbish these play parks, or, as is noted further down, if the play park equipment is removed, it is then left as an open space. Surely that's the first step to find out what we can legally and can or can't do. So, not that I wish to close play parks. I have older children, but, I have got children myself, and I don't wish to close play parks. However, in the long run, the district council isn't going to be dealing with this in the future. Some other authority is, and they're going to do exactly the same thing in a few years down the line anyway. So I think our first port of call is to find out what we legally can and can't do, and go from there, if I'm honest.
Thank you, Vicky. Is that something we would have a cost to it, or is that something we could actually do without this added budget?
So my understanding of the position is that absolutely right, and that's the purpose of the study, is to establish that legal baseline and make sure we've got complete understanding.
So this is the legal part of it, right? Okay, fully understood there. Have we got well, I can recommend actually from the chair that actually we ought to be putting this forward to Cabinet to do this consolidation study of £20,000, even though it's not actually in the budget line. I know there are monies available from our reserves. So I'm going to say all in favour?
Yeah.
Majority. Those against? Those abstaining? Thank you very much. That's going back to Cabinet to be recommended to go forward. I think at this point we're near to dinner time being provided. I think it's a good time to have a break, and we'll come back at, sorry?
Ready.
So we will do the next part of the special items after we come back at 1:45. Thank you.